material development, we push the boundaries of material properties and testing. But what's the point if all the data are siloed? Do we really learn everything? And that's why I want to talk about how to use AI and these technologies in material testing and material development today. LabV is a software company, part of the Netsch group. We have a long tradition of lab equipment and thermal analysis. And what we do is we make data for R&D and quality control teams available, usable, analyzable. So what do you all want when you work in your daily life? Whether you are in R&D, in process engineering, quality control, or just in the lab, if you have one, you basically want more efficiency. You don't want to have these non-value adding tasks anymore. Wasting time copy-pasting Excel files is one of the highest pains we can see in every team, right? At the end, everyone wants to have better tires, better products. Why? Because if you use database decision making, well, the likelihood of having much better performance and maybe have a better position on the market towards your competitors is so much higher, right? There is a huge innovation pressure, and I think we've seen that over the course of the last 2.5 days. Everyone talks about it. There is a higher competition. Everyone is in the race to develop the better tires, and this is basically a good thing, but that's what every organization wants to have. Push innovation, push the boundaries over and over and over again. And finally, there is a huge thing, that's something that is very critical here in Europe, and it's probably the same in the US, in Asia, in India, and in Africa. But we see that very special here in Western Europe, is that we have a knowledge problem. What is the knowledge problem in the organization? A whole generation is retiring. It's nothing new, we all gonna retire at some point, right? But the current generation who's retiring, now until the next 3, 4, 5, 7 years, right? They're actually the people who used to work in R&D before Excel came in, which means most of the knowledge is just in the head. Once the people leave the organization, the knowledge is gone forever. That's a huge challenge as well for all the organizations. So what do we want? More efficiency, more innovation, better products, and a better knowledge consolidation, if you will. How do we all work in 2025? Because that's actually a big deal. Well, information sources are completely distributed. Silos everywhere, I have different sources. I don't know which data comes from which source. I have to do a lot of manual data entry. I mentioned Excel already. It's basically files and files everywhere, Excel sheets left and right. I have to put all the data I have somehow in a system. The file structure is very inconsistent. Most organizations don't actually have a standardized structure, which means one team within the R&D department is going to structure its files in a way, another person is going to do it in another way, which means refining information is almost impossible. The access to data is also a nightmare because of the previous problems, of course, but also because of the lack of a standardized system. Right? And depending on which studies you look at, you can see that roughly for what we call typical R&D work, so in the office, working on a computer, working in a lab, we all kind of lose 2.5 hours per day searching for information. Now, that's all the information you're looking for within a day. It could be booking a meeting room, doing your travel expenses, but also your actual work, right? So if you reduce that and you basically take only the time spent on searching for information that are actually related to R&D processes, we're talking about roughly 1.8 hours per day. So if you do the math, let's assume you have 10 persons, it's 18 hours per day, right? The solution is what we call the material intelligence platform. What it is very simple. Material intelligence is a holistic approach, which is combining new and modern technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it's a holistic data management approach. So we're talking here about material-related data from formulations up to processing and testing information. That's what we call material-related data, so the whole context of the R&D process. They are analyzed and they're used to do, for example, predictions about the future. A very simple example, you take testing data from the lab, you do this for many months, and then once you have a data set that is large enough, you can actually start applying machine learning on it to predict for a new project based on historical data, future performance of a specific rubber formulation. So that's the material intelligence part, right? Platform, why is a platform nowadays the most important and critical approach to use from a technological point of view? It's because, as I mentioned, you have so many different sources. You cannot just enter data manually anymore and try to consolidate something in some Excel sheets. You need a software solution that is basically open to any sources you use in your R&D process. It could be your ERP system, SAP, Microsoft. It could be the lab equipment. This is nowadays very, very simple to just exchange data between a lab equipment measuring device and a software solution. It could be your MES as well, depending on what system you use when you're doing your physical testing. It could be also your testing bench where you test your tires. It doesn't matter. As long as you have an API somewhere, you actually need a platform, because a platform, it's a tool that is aggregating and gathering all the data sources together in one central place. At the end of the day, when we talk about the material intelligence platform, that's the definition we use. A material intelligence platform such as LabV is a software for the management, analysis and optimization of material data, which is combining material intelligence, machine learning and overall data integration to increase the efficiency and especially innovation in material development and its application. How does it work? Specifically on LabV, our platform is basically two-sided platform. On the one side, that's where we come from. We come from the lab equipment. That's what Netsch is also a world leader for. We gather all the testing data from all the equipment. Doing so is very easy. We take responsibility for it. We are in charge. It doesn't take very long to do it. And it doesn't matter if it's a chemical or physical testing, right? It doesn't have to be a standard equipment as well. It could be also a very individualized testing equipment that you designed yourself for your specific purposes. How does it work? We have a patented mapping engine that is basically the same way a human being, when you become an email, you read who the email is coming from, what's the subject, is there an attachment to it, and what's the text. You basically read through the information. That's what the mapping engine is doing as well, becoming files from the testing equipment and reading through it, analyzing the metadata and the actual measurements to understand which project are we talking about, and then put that in our centralized and structured database. On the other hand, we connect to the whole IT infrastructure. As I already mentioned, usually the ERP is a very critical source of information. Mainly here in Europe, SAP, but it could be Microsoft as well, or industry-specific ones. As long as we have the API for it, it doesn't matter. And we talk here about a bidirectional exchange of data. It means you have, for example, in the R&D process, you have your project information in your ERP system. We synchronize with that over our API so that we always keep the ERP as a single source of truth. We don't want to have double data handling, right? But at the end of the process, once your project is done and you have a product that is finalized, this product has to be communicated and put further into the process in the organization. And we basically give back the data that are needed in the ERP system over this same API. Same thing for the MES, and it could be anything else in the production. Depending on the size of the organization, sometimes you also have an engineering center or innovation center that is not working with a larger software, but maybe with a specific solution. Or, as the previous person mentioned as well, if you have any IoT solution somewhere in your machines, then it could be a source of information as well for us. So basically, we are cloud-based, so it means your access to your information from anywhere, and it's very safe because it's always locally stored in the region where our customers are located. The question now is why using AI in material testing, right? Because AI for the sake of AI doesn't make any sense. Well, if you look at testing on the one side, we're talking about efficiency problems. We're talking about very scarce resources, people, money, time, products, raw materials. Everything is more expensive. Everything is rare, which is the reason why we should maybe be careful about how we use them. The data are scattered. I think I've been talking about it a lot already, talking about the different structures, the different formats, and also the different sources. And on top of it, we're talking about large amounts of data. Probably amounts that are so large that actually human beings cannot deal with it, right? So that's the whole point of thinking about using the software. The innovation pressure is nothing new. I think everyone knows it here in the room, and you're probably dealing with it every single day. How do I differentiate myself from my competitors? How do I follow the regulations worldwide towards more sustainability, for example? It's a very high pressure for all the organization on the R&D side. And at the end, the lack of experience is not meaning that the tire industry has no experience in what it's doing, of course not. But with new regulations and new technologies, new products, for example, bio-based materials that you use, we all lack the experience because it's completely new. Any innovation is usually something newer, which is why we actually have to do more try and error. And we sometimes, in certain fields of tire R&D, we actually miss the knowledge about how to scale up this into a running production. So that's the one side of the story. On the other hand, AI, artificial intelligence, and I'm talking about AI as a technology. I'm not talking about a specific provider of one service. I'm just talking about it as a technology, right? Artificial intelligence is great to automate tasks. It can do repetitive tasks at very high speed. As we always say to our customers, our AI assistant never goes on vacation, right? It's always working. It can always work 24/7. It doesn't need a break. It's very precise and very consistent, which is also something that human beings are not the best at. The data integration is very interesting because artificial intelligence doesn't really care about just data sources and the data formats and if it's structured or not. It can do different tasks at the same time. You can actually use different agents to do different things, and the output within the same amount of time is double or triple the amount. Data science is a huge thing because the mathematical correlation that you can use in artificial intelligence are way beyond what human beings can do or what human beings would have to learn using other type of software such as Microsoft Excel and macros and VBA, for example. AI is basically enabling all of us to do data-driven decisions, and I think we've heard it before. When you use a ChatGPT, how many times when you use it, you actually make a decision based on it. Whether it's just building a presentation for a keynote or writing an email to someone, you actually make a decision based on the output of artificial intelligence. And machine learning, that's something we are working on already. We have first proof of concept with our customers. How do I use historical data to make predictions? So for example, I have passed 1,500 projects. I have the results of that, and I want to basically, based on new requirements for a new customer project, I want to see what machine learning can do in developing a formulation that meet the requirements. The last time we tried, we achieved an 82% accuracy as compared as to what actual human developers were doing, and I'll touch the added value of that in a minute. And I've been talking about it the last 2 days here because we have on this conference also different providers. Simulation is a huge topic, especially FEM simulation in your space, right? So how do we use these technologies and this input, for example, out of a material intelligence platform as an input for a simulation software? That's while we say somehow between testing and AI, there is something that is a common zone, and that's why we truly believe in the application of artificial intelligence in material testing. What does it mean for us? It's not meant here to be a sales keynote, that's why, but maybe to translate it, to make it more tangible, and you're I'm happy to get to see you on our booth later if you want to see more about the software. But when we talk about intelligence in our material intelligence platform, we're talking about analyzing data and visualizing them. So the whole mathematical library is available in our AI-based assistant. You can visualize pretty much anything you can imagine. The data, you can be from a table to a diagram and many plots on top of each other. It's within seconds you can do it basically. And you can also integrate what we call company-specific skills or company-specific analysis, which means if you have your own chemical and mathematical chemical formulations or formulas that you actually use, and it's your own IP, right? And you can actually code them and put them as a skill into our AI-based assistant so that the assistant is yours and not just a generic one we are developing. We're also talking about comparing data together and recognizing trends. So we're talking here about actually only data-based and data-driven decisions. You basically use your data and make a decision. Very, very simple. If you think a little bit about how is a material or a new formulation, a new tire compound going to behave under certain conditions, the process of testing is very long, right? You need very different type of test cycles. Well, you may, using artificial intelligence and also a little bit of machine learning, you may be able to actually predict or at least detect very early potential failures in a material. And the same applies, by the way, for quality control. On the quality side, once you actually are done with research and you put everything at scale in production, using historical data enables you to recognize and identify very, very early small problems that could be actually a critical issue later in the production. And the intelligent data analysis, it's basically here on this picture is very specific, a quality control chart as an example, because it's a widely known tool in the quality, right? But imagine that you have basically this type of tool programmed into a software and the data is just being filled automatically and you just have to look at the result. You don't actually have to actively analyze the data anymore. The quality chart is going to be updated over and over again every time you need it, always with the latest data sets. We see two different or main trends this year. In 2025, the industry says everywhere it's going to be the data year, right? We have been analyzing the trends in R&D and quality control, very similar from sustainability to next generation materials over to the use of artificial intelligence. Collaboration is something very important as well, because we all want to get rid of the silos as well. But if you look at the trends, it's basically everything has something to do with data. It's all related to data. On the other hand, on the technology side, because I'm talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but it's so many different technologies out there. 2025, it's basically a continuum from 2024. It's going to be the year of AI agents. So more and more we're going to talk about an AI agent. What is an agent? It could be, for example, your Microsoft Copilot for the controlling department. That's a controlling agent. For HR, it will be an HR agent, right? It's basically the same technology, but they have specific skills, they understand data a different way, and they provide different outputs. So whether you look at Google, Gartner, whoever IBM it is, they're all talking about the same thing, AI agent for this year. Which is a reason why when you look at the trends in the industry and the technology side, we actually believe that AI is a game changer for R&D and material testing. And that's why we trying to push that more and more into our material intelligence platform. What did we learn from last year, but from the last years on the market as a software provider? We obviously work across many industries and not only the tire industry. So I tried to summarize basically our learnings there. In the development process, R&D process, using a material intelligence platform, using your data properly can help you save up to 40% of development times. So you can reduce your development cycles for new products to up to 40%. On the quality control, because it's already very standardized, we're talking about more about 30%, right? But very important is, whether it's R&D, and it's usually more in the R&D side than the quality control, because the quality control testing is very different. So if I only focus on R&D, new tire development, you can expect using material intelligence to actually save up to 50% of your actual physical chemical tests on tire products. That's what our customers have been able to achieve, but not only, because we actually can also generate a more long-term and less measurable value for the whole organization.
Excuse me, Charles, we are just about out of time. Would you like to take questions now or take the last?
Let me just go through the last couple of seconds and I can take one or two questions, right? So we get rid of errors, we secure the knowledge, we build better products, and we are all future-proof because we can use data better in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Charles? If you can use the Slido tool and make sure you're in the 5 conference room, you can do that digitally. Okay, we have one question.
What about the data security?
Very critical issue. Every R&D organization, it's basically the treasure, right? So it's like sitting on a gold mine. Your data, your R&D data is the most precious thing you have in an organization. We use the best, most famous cloud providers, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, because that's their job, right? They're providing secure infrastructure for the data, but you own the data. We don't own it. So our company, we don't have access to the database of our customers. It's your data, your IP. We just provide the infrastructure and the system to use them. The data centers we use, for example, for our European or German customers is located in Germany, and there is no safer possibility to use the cloud providers than the ones we're working with.